Hi there, I'm Holly James. I'm your co-host with Business Heart to Hearts. Welcome. And I am here with my co-host, Dr. Alan Chong.
Hi there, and I'm Dr. Alan Chong, of course, with Holly James, and we're here to talk and share and interview special guests about what's going on in their hearts and minds and their intuition specifically, and how that has influenced and shaped their businesses, both here and now, and their successes of past. So today we have a really special guest that I want to introduce today. He has created a number of businesses. He's constantly an entrepreneur. He's chairman of Laughlin Associates, which is a company, I believe, that creates and helps entrepreneurs incorporate and have successful businesses, as well as successfully reach their dreams. He's also the founder and principal at The Unshackled Owner. He's an author, international speaker, and media personality. It's Aaron Scott Young. So welcome, Aaron. Tell us about yourself.
Well, you just did a pretty good job right there. First of all, thanks guys for having me on. It's delightful to be with you and see you again, Alan. And yeah, I've the short story is I started my first company just before my 19th birthday, a company with a payroll with employees. And we built it up and sold it. And I started another company and built it up and sort of sold part of it and kind of crashed part of it into the dirt and in flames. I spent 3 years, Holly, before we started recording, you mentioned corporate. I did spend 3 years as vice president of a fairly large multinational public company, and left there after 3.5 years on great terms, but just when the CEO said, why are you leaving? What's the matter? And I said, this is your dream. It's not my dream. But that stint in the public company, we were very successful while I was in charge of sales for 300 plus offices. And I was young, I was 29. And so there was a significant amount of money made at that point. And I've started in 97 to start buying and selling companies. And I've been doing that ever since. And I used to take a much more active role in the company. Now I'm more come in, identify the problem. In certain circumstances, we use private equity to grow a company. And I come in as a private equity investor and we do that. And that's kind of what I do. And then I raise horses and goats on a little farm in Washington State. And that's probably, I'm as passionate about genetics as I am about business.
I want to know how you raise goats.
Well, you get a mommy goat and a daddy goat.
He raises them.
Oh, raises. I thought you said
raises. Oh, no, not
goats.
race. Oh, racing goats? No.
Okay.
Hey, maybe you're onto something, Alan. Maybe that's a new business idea.
Let's joint venture on something there, Aaron.
It's like ESPN 8, we'll be ready.
There'd be a lot of money in that.
So Holly, you had a question for Aaron here.
Yeah, Aaron, I would love to know if you could share with us, it sounds like you've run quite well a few businesses, sold a lot by the sounds of it also, but is there a time that you could share with us where you thought maybe you weren't going to make it in business, and kind of how that felt and how you got through that, what you used, what skills, personal skills that you used to get through that situation?
Well, probably like all career entrepreneurs, I'm at 37 years now doing this, right? And I've had hundreds and hundreds of employees and have grown a whole bunch of multi-million dollar companies. So there have been a lot of scary times, right? I remember all the way back, going back to Black Monday when the stock market crashed and freaked everybody out. And the advent of the internet and then the .com crash. And and which started the lower interest rates, which began the real estate boom in 2008, and of course September 11th, and COVID-19. All of those external things have made us have to pivot. But probably there were two times, and I can share both of these stories, or we can just do one. But they were really, pretty scary times, and I really wondered, is this it? The first time was when I was young, and as I said, I crashed one company into the dirt in flames. I'd sold my first business, which was a recycling business, before that was common. And that goes back to 1982. And we had built that up and been really successful with it. But I fell in love with this beautiful girl, and I didn't think she would want to be with a garbage man. So I sold the recycling business.
That was probably intuitive there, Aaron. Good job.
I'm a clever fellow. And I got into the cellular phone industry back in 1986 and built it up and became one of the largest dealers in the Northwest, multiple offices, lots of salespeople. We're in the newspaper. We had TV and radio ads, and we were all over the place. And then in one day, and this is interesting for people who are involved with franchises or other places where you're dealing with a big corporate giant, and then you've got your little corner of the market. We were all called in to GTE MobileNet's corporate office, all the dealers, and we sat there. There's a big room full of people from all over the country sitting in this room in their beautiful brand new offices. And they let us know that effective immediately at this meeting, our commission structure was changing, how we got paid was changing, our co-op advertising everything was changing. And basically they had just pulled the rug out from everything that the company was built on from a cash flow and marketing perspective. Now, I was arguably the youngest person in the room as a 23-year-old or 24-year-old, and all these guys with gray hair, they all went and closed up shop. Well, but not me. See, I was one of the biggest ones, and I thought, these are a bunch of losers. I can figure this out. And I had credit lines, and I had money in the bank, and I had money equity in my home, and I was in my second home by this point as a young guy, right? I bought my first house, sold it, bought my second house. We had equity.
Aaron, did you feel that immediately in that meeting when they were laying out all this news? Did that feeling?
No.
Okay, so
it's unfair. This is crazy. But I felt like I could figure it out. And anyway, I was utterly and completely wrong. I didn't understand market forces at that point. I was a kid. I didn't know what I was doing. These gray-haired people were smarter than me, and they got out with all their marbles. And I spent all my savings in my company, maxed out my credit lines, maxed out my credit cards, got into my home equity, maxed out my home equity. Pretty soon, I'm hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars upside down with no way out. It was gone. It was shot.
And what did that feel like, Aaron?
Well, so my wife was 9 months pregnant with our second child, sitting with me in bankruptcy court. That's what it felt like. And
was this the same woman that you shut down the recycling business for?
Yes.
It was. Okay.
Nice to hear.
Yeah, and still the one that goes through all the craziness with me. But we sat there, we took our nice shiny cars, new or nearly new cars back to the bank and gave them our keys. And I had to get like a almost 400,000 mile old Ford Taurus. We bought her a crummy little Hyundai that we couldn't fix the starter on it. And she would have to park it on a hill so she could roll start it, pop the clutch and get it to go with two little car seats in the back seat. And that was that. I mean, you want to talk about feeling like you've really failed miserably. That was a time when I felt like I am, in retrospect, it didn't matter how I felt about what was happening to me. it was still happening to me. And I tried, as I see so many other entrepreneurs do, I put blinders on and I tried to believe, well, either I can solve this, or it's not as bad as I think it is, or, I'll fight my way through and claw my way through. It was just absolutely immature thinking, stupid thinking. It was clueless about how the market actually works. Now, there's a reason the average entrepreneur only makes $25,000 a year. And it's because they keep doing stupid things, believing that somehow they're the exception to the rule in the market. And I learned, thankfully, at a very young age, that instead of me trying to fight against the tide, it's better to acknowledge, oh, the tide has changed, and I need to reevaluate how to behave under new circumstances. We're recording this during the whole COVID-19 pandemic. There's no getting around messages that worked 2 or 3 months ago don't resonate right now with people. And if I continued to just keep pitching the old stories, we would have to go, we wouldn't be surprised that everything stopped working. But many entrepreneurs, they just doggedly chase that same story, and they wonder why nobody's paying attention to them. And it's because they're not listening to the market. They're only listening to themselves.
So Aaron, in this story, what was the big turnaround? Did it take like a real ego being beat up, and then something deeper inside, or what eventually happened with this?
Yeah, well, what happened? Remember, I was kind of famous around Portland, Oregon, and because I was in the media all the time, and a fellow that I knew very arm's length asked me out to lunch. And what I knew about him was he was a CEO of some business. I didn't know anything about it. And I knew that he had a brand new white Suburban and he had a boat. So to me, he was rich, right? Because as a young dad, a young guy, and this guy he just seemed to have it together because he had a boat, a nice boat, and a big new Suburban. And he took me out to lunch and he said, would you ever consider going to work for somebody? And so he was trying to qualify me. Well, in my mind, I'm going, crud, I hardly graduated high school. I got 1 year of junior college. Like, I've never worked for anybody. I'm almost certainly going to disappoint somebody because I don't know. I'm not a college guy, right? And I said, I don't know. What did you have in mind? And he said, well, our company's several hundred offices around the world, publicly traded on NASDAQ. And I'd like you to be our vice president of sales. And
wow.
Then, so it was a huge compliment, but all I felt was inadequate. I thought there's no way I could possibly be qualified for that job. Now, let me tell you one more thing about this girl that I sold the recycling business.
It's about the girl.
She was raised by a single mom. And she always, and it was her and her sister and their grandma and her mom. So these 4 women living in this little house in a farming community in Southeast Idaho. All she ever wanted was to be a stay-at-home mom because her mom was not there. Good mom, but busy. All I ever wanted to do was be an entrepreneur. So before we got married, we talked about that. And she said, Aaron, you be an entrepreneur. I said, it'll be a roller coaster. Who knows what'll happen? She goes, you do that, but I want to be home with our kids. And I don't care if we live in a cardboard box as long as I can be home with the kids. I'm strangely emotional telling you the story. It's kind of catching up with me. Anyway, so I came home from that meeting with this man, and we were like sunk. We were bankrupt. We're scrambling to make money. We'd found this little program called Gleaners, where they get the stuff past the pull date, milk that had passed the date, lettuce that was wilting, right? And for $11 a month, you would get 2 or 3 pickups at somebody's driveway where they'd gone and gotten the bread and everything from the grocery store. So there were multiple times when I had to ask them to hold my $11 check, right? So I go, wow, I go home to my wife and I said, I've been offered this job and sounds like a good job, and it's health insurance, and it's a car allowance, and it's a stock options and all this stuff. And she said, yeah, but do you really want a job? You know, do you want to work for somebody else? Because you want to be an entrepreneur. And I said, she goes, why don't you think about it a little bit? Or actually what she said, why don't you pray about it?
Amazing. Her response is just absolutely incredible.
It's crossroads.
I haven't told this story for a while, so this is heart to heart. So I'm going right to this moment. But anyway, she said, why don't you think about it? And we did all that. And I came back and I said, if you're cool with it, I think I better take this opportunity. I better take this job. She goes, you feel good about it? I said, yep, I feel great about it. And she goes, oh my gosh, thank you so much. I'm so glad. She was like, whoa, I'm relieved. But she was not going to say it until I was ready to do it.
Wow.
And I will always.
And did you truly feel good about it, even though you knew deep down you were meant to be an entrepreneur?
I felt relieved.
Were you conflicted? You felt.
So I started a couple of other businesses. So I built one successful company and sold it. Built another one. I sold the service side, but we crashed and burned by then. I'd started a couple other little businesses, one of which is still in business today. It's called the Thai Guy. You see them in malls and stuff. But I'd started that back then. But and subsequently sold it. But nothing was working in a way that would take care of this young family. So I was mostly conflicted because I felt concerned whether or not I could actually do the work. So I took the job, and the same things that had worked in my entrepreneurial things worked here. And I was one of 3 vice presidents in a pretty big operation. And so I had a lot of flexibility to do things my way, and it flourished, and we came out of it, and it really sent us on a trajectory that, generally speaking, has been very positive for many, many years. But yeah, that was a time that I thought, maybe I'm not cut out for this. Maybe I just got lucky. Maybe, it's always tough to look at yourself when you're down and try to ask hard questions and say, is this them or is it me? And sometimes, awkwardly and oftentimes, it's me. It's the way I'm doing it is the problem. And it's not a fun realization to get to, but the quicker you get to it, the quicker you can pivot. I hate using the word pivot because it's used all the time, but the quicker you can readjust and trim your sails, set a new course and do that.
So I find that story remarkable.
It's not even the really big story. It's just a story.
Sure.
Tougher ones.
It's a story that obviously touched you, and you were at a crossroads that was like, what was when you think back, obviously it's still fresh in your mind, those thoughts and feelings, right? How torn you must have been. But I got the lesson in that, you, even though your heart said you had some side hustles still, that's what I chuckled about. You always had some side hustles going on. So I'm not going to rely on just this one thing. I got to do my own thing still. And that's cool. But there's a point where you made a heartfelt decision that you had to do the right thing at the right time, even though it wasn't necessarily your first choice. Tell us about that.
Well, I think, well, you just said it very well. I think at the end of the day, all of us have to decide what is important. And there was nothing more important than my family, Michelle and the kids. So, I mean, to continue to pursue a course that was not bearing fruit and putting my family through this struggle would have only, in my opinion, would have been selfish. Now, that's not just the same as saying I'm on a good path. It just hasn't borne fruit yet. There's a difference. Sometimes you have to sacrifice to build something. Well, you virtually always have to sacrifice to build something new. That wasn't the case. I was in the doldrums. I was trying to figure something out, but nothing was really gelling in a way that felt great like the first two businesses had. And so when this came up, it was less about giving up this entrepreneurial title, because it wasn't, the dream wasn't gone. It was just the moment. Mm-hmm. It was just about will I fail working for somebody else? That was really the scariest thing. Was I had no context for doing that. I'd been figuring out how to make money since I was a teenager, since I was 14. I came from a home where my mom and dad loved me and encouraged me and were great parents, but had no clue about money. And they still, they're old now. My dad's 80, my mom's 76, older, and they live with my sister in her house, right? And with her family, because they never understood about money. I knew if I was going to have any kind of a different life, I had to make money. And I figured out entrepreneurial things to do from the time I was young and continue to do it now. That one little moment from 93 to 96 was a phenomenal, eye-opening experience, because it showed me the other world that, Holly, you commented on before we started recording about corporate life. But mm-hmm. I've told many entrepreneurs to close up shop and go get a job. And I've also told people who are working a very safe W-2, quit the job and go do this. Because there are times in life when you make a fundamental shift toward a specific outcome. And if you're not making it in the entrepreneurial world, then and it's putting a emotional and a financial burden on you and those that you have obligations to or stewardship for, then you should stop it and take care of the things that matter most, not just to fulfill some fantasy that, if I just go to one more program, if I just get that book written, if I just, go to hear Tony Robbins speak, if I just put my credit card down one more time, maybe that'll do it. No, most people who get sucked into that personal development world, and I certainly speak at some personal development conferences, but usually they get to a place where they either run out of money or they realize that there is no pixie dust that these gurus are going to sprinkle on your head, right? You have to do something that the market actually wants. You have to deliver it in a way that people choose you over your competition. And then you have to be there to fulfill on what you promised. And it's not magic. You have to do the work. And when you do the work and you do it in integrity and you do something that people actually want, then amazingly, you make money. And with money, you can pursue all your passions. With money, you can donate to all your causes. You can buy your ranch. You can go on mission trips. You can build the big house. You can save the squirrels. You can do whatever you want.
You can raise goats.
You can raise goats.
Raise goats.
Raise goats, yeah.
Raise goats.
Aaron, it sounds like you've had quite a history of finding new entrepreneurial opportunities, finding new businesses. So it sounds to me like you've had to make a lot of big decisions along the way. And just out of curiosity, what have you used to make those big decisions? I know, facts and figures and research and kind of all the hard data, but in addition to that, is there anything else that you use to make those big decisions?
Sure. So because my education, because I'm self-taught, right? Let me rewind it. So if I could, I used to not be able to say this out loud. It felt awkward for me to say this out loud, but I've just come to accept this is true. My skill or superpower or scripturally, like my talent or whatever is, I really am able to see the end. I'm able to see, here's where we are, here's the end. Mm-hmm. And yes, I know we have to go through this jungle, but the jungle doesn't really bother me. I can see the path. And I never thought that was uniquely valuable, except for it turns out it is. And mostly over time, when somebody explains something to me, I have a pretty good intuitive reaction to it. I'm able to listen both to the storyteller, as well as the story, as well as the filters through which I'm seeing, the lenses through which I'm seeing it all based on my experience. And I can usually intuit fairly quickly if this is something even to go to the next step. And I don't get sold on a lot of unicorns and rainbows, right? Mm-hmm. Everybody's story is full of piles of gold. And I know what it actually takes because we've built dozens and dozens of successful companies and some flops. And I've invested in a lot of companies where I lost money. And so I've got enough of this gray hair now that I have some ideas. So I think from a practical standpoint, first it's something somewhere in this area, my heart or my gut is the first thing. And then it's looking at things, usually with just a Benjamin Franklin pros and cons. I just list them. I don't really do actuarial stuff. I hire people to gather and do due diligence on companies. I have great, phenomenal, well-educated, brilliant people around me to do that stuff. But I look at it, and then the other thing is, and I hope your listeners will understand the significance of this. I decide, is this something that I want to spend my accumulated resources, my money, my time, my creativity, my interest? Is this something I want to spend part of my lifetime on? It doesn't really matter if it can make a lot of money if I don't want to do it. If it isn't going to make me happy that I'm involved in it. And if worst case scenario, if I'm an investor, what if I have to take it over? What if all of a sudden these guys drop the ball and I have to go in and take over the company? Do I have any interest whatsoever in what's going on here? Because if you can't fall in love with your company, you shouldn't probably be involved. And I want to be super clear about this. I do not subscribe to the concept of pursuing your passion. I don't believe in it. I hear people say it all the time. Mm-hmm. They're mostly poor people. They're almost always poor. They're rich people passionately pursue things that make sense to pursue. They do.
I love that. They bring the passion to the activity rather than looking for the passion in the activity.
That is so cool.
And that's a great point of view.
And then all the stuff that is filling your imagination, all the stuff that you long for, whatever it is, can be yours if you successfully provide value to the marketplace, right? Bring value and make sure, by the way, here, big secret, kids, you have to bring value and you have to do it profitably. Because a lot of people bring value, but they're terrified to ask for money. And so they'll say, well, yeah, but these people need it too. So I'm going to offer my services for a pittance. And then I'm going to find some sort of nobility in my poverty, and how I serve the masses in a way like a Mother Teresa. People will reward themselves with that, but what they really want is to not be struggling. And I promise you, if you build something where you're not struggling and you're bringing real value profitably, the whole world becomes yours. I don't care what you want to commit the rest of your time or resources to. Solving big problems, being in the political arena, curing disease, helping the homeless, feeding children, serving God, dancing naked in the desert. I don't care what you want to do. If you have money, you can do anything you want. Because money, by the way, folks that are listening, money is nothing. All money is a magnifier, a multiplier of who you are. And if you're a great person, it'll make you greater. And if you're a jerk, it'll make you a bigger jerk. And if you're miserly, you'll just be Scrooge. And if you're generous, you'll be Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. It's money, just all it does is multiply who you are anyway. So if you just want to do big things, find a way to bring real value to the world, earn some dollars, and then apply the dollars to things that will light you up and will make your life full of joy and full of satisfaction, rather than going, well, I love flowers and I'm going to, or I raise horses. I love horses. There's no money in the horse business. That's it. I don't care how passionate I am. I'm never going to get rich in the horse business. But I am rich, so I can do horse stuff. And I got into that top 1% a very long time ago. And I get people look at me and go, oh, you must have been born with a silver spoon. Nope, not at all. My mom was doing daycare. My dad was working 2 jobs. I learned that if you want things, it's this old Zig Ziglar quote, right? You can have anything you want if you help enough other people get what they want. And that's the truth. And you can do that fixing toilets, putting tires on vehicles. You can do it by spreading fertilizer or bark chips or designing software, whatever. You do something that people want to buy, do it well, be in integrity, and do it profitably, and you'll have everything you ever want out of life. And I've gotten off onto a business thing, and I could tell you a lot more heart-centered stuff. But
right, I want to ask you a question there.
I just want people to hear that, because not enough people just say it straight.
And yeah, I really appreciate what you said. Actually, one of my coaching clients said to me the other day, my business is sucking the life out of me. And I said, your business can't suck the life out of you. You create the life within yourself, and you bring that into your business, and you expand that into your business. So, and that's, it all starts within us. And I think you just made that point so beautifully and so powerfully.
Yes,
so
brilliant.
Thank you for sharing that story.
You're welcome.
And that is even though you're talking business, you're talking to what most entrepreneurs need to hear and evaluate with themselves. Are they trying to live out their passion, or are they passionate about whatever they're doing at the time? Right?
There's a great old proverb, a Turkish proverb that says, no matter how far you go down the wrong road, turn back. And most entrepreneurs, they go, but I've invested all this time and all this money, and I've created this stuff, and it's in my garage, or I have a lease and I have to keep paying, and they just allow circumstances or time committed to defining how they're going to spend their lifetime. And I just don't believe in that. If something doesn't work, then stop doing it. Stop it. Just stop doing it. And people go, I can't stop. I have all these obligations. And I say, just kind of what you said, Holly. No, you can absolutely stop. And it's sort of like being in a really bad marriage or relationship. You try to tolerate stuff for a long time, but when you finally just say it's over, that's a very painful moment, but then everything gets better. You relax because you've cut the cancer away. And sometimes that entrepreneurial exercise is cancer and you have to get rid of it. It's not doing you any good. It's not serving you. So stop it. And by the way, not everybody needs to be an entrepreneur. I mean, it's great if you have that vision, but a lot of people try to force it out of some book they read, some class they took, some friend that encouraged them. And they're really trying, but entrepreneurs are kind of freaks. I mean, they're kind of insane. They do crazy stuff over and over, and they take huge risks knowing that 80% of the time they're going to fail, right? And it takes a very unique vision of the world to see opportunity where others don't see it, and to be able to capitalize on that. And that does not make you better. It's just a different skill.
But I love what you said, Aaron, is to know basically when to turn around and say, sorry, we are, for example, very tangible to me. I've been there, know when to stop spending money on a particular project. And because my heart's not into it, it's painful now. And I'm just trying to push it through.
Yeah.
I think that's what you're saying.
And that's when the cancer starts, right?
Yeah.
When your heart's not there, it's, yeah.
So Aaron Scott Young, what's your living legacy? What would you say it is right now? Your living legacy?
Well, it's got to be my children and grandchildren, right? I mean, there's nothing more important. At the time of this recording, yesterday was Mother's Day, and in the United States, and we live on a farm, and we've all been socially distancing. And yesterday, my kids and the 6 grandkids, I've got 4 children, and 3 of them are married with kids. And so my youngest is living in Japan going to college. But the other 3 all were over with the grandkids, riding horses, playing in the pool, barbecuing, on the swings under this 150-year-old tree in my backyard. I've got a 2-acre yard. We have this enormous giant maple tree with swings hanging on. And I watched all these little children, the oldest one's 7 years old, all running around the yard, and just everybody interacting. And I thought, this right here, what I'm observing, this, and my wife and I were talking about this yesterday, and then again this morning over a cup of coffee, we were talking about everything we've done, everything we've been through, and you haven't even heard the worst of it in this conversation, all brought us to this point, which is so phenomenal, so beautiful, so fulfilling, that it didn't matter what the challenges were, because here we are today on a beautiful sunny spring day, acres of green grass, a dozen horses running in the field, 6 little grandkids that all want to have a moment with Papa and Yaya, there's nothing, and of course my marriage is, oh my gosh, I don't know what I would do without Michelle. I don't want to say my marriage is better than anybody else's, but I don't know anyone more happily married. And so
you're gonna have me in tears here in a moment. That's beautiful. That's yeah.
Whatever we're working toward, I can't emphasize this enough. Whatever you're doing with when you wake up, if you wake up in the morning, if you wake up and you're alive, you can get out of bed, it makes sense to invest your effort into creating something that you love and not just going through drudgery every day. And you have to decide if that's working in a cubicle, doing something, find a way to love it. If it's being the beginning of an entrepreneurial journey and you're struggling, find something to love. If it's a mature company you're getting a little bored with, find what you still love, or find somebody else who wants to love it more than you and give it up to the next steward of that business. Let somebody else have it and go further with it. But don't waste your time on things that don't bring you fulfillment. It doesn't mean you have to be blissfully happy every moment. Anything worth anything, you fight for and you work at and you struggle with, because you should become a new person, a better, more advanced version of yourself as you grow something. And if you can do that, you'll be very happy with everything you do. And if you don't, you're going to wonder, it's going to be that cliche story of you're going to get to a place and go, what the hell did I do with my time? Or I didn't have enough time, or if I'd only known. We don't know.
No.
We don't know. So make every day count for something, for yourself and for others. And it doesn't matter what you're doing. It only matters that it brings value. That's what matters.
Wow. Final question, Aaron. That's beautiful, by the way. This whole interview has been really moving to me. And I hope our audiences too, I'm sure, because you shared some things that were deep and heartfelt. And like you said, a couple stories that you really hadn't shared for quite some time. And we could see you're visibly touched by that. So final question for you is, what do you want to be remembered for?
Okay. It's a good question. I decided a few years ago, I read some, like maybe 2.5 years ago, I was doing some research and I came upon some statistics that kind of burned into me a little bit. And I was, at the time, I'd been offered a television show. I've written some books. I do all this. I get paid a lot of money to go give talks. Alan, you first met me at a place where I was giving a talk. But I read these statistics about business, and I thought about everything I'd learned up to this point. And I thought, the best thing I can do is not ignore opportunities to gain notoriety, but not be focused on that either. Take every good opportunity that sets me towards my vision, I pursue, as long as it's on the path, I do it. But I decided, and this may sound a little vague as far as a legacy, but let me tell you what I mean. I decided the most valuable thing I could do for the world outside of my little clan of my family and my close friends and my team. The best thing I could do was to help more companies stay in business for more years, making more money. Because if I can help more companies stay in business longer, nothing lasts forever, right? We all grew up with Kodak film, or Kodak's gone, right? Sears and Roebuck was Amazon. It's almost out of business, and on and on and on. So more companies, more years, making more money, because I thought they'll hire more people. They'll pay for health insurance. They'll give money to the Little League teams. They'll do things that will be way beyond anything I can personally do. So if I can just help more, like if I help one business owner who can help 15 employees have a successful career, and those people go out and spend money in the market and so on, that'll be good. By taking what I've learned, that's what the Unshackled Owner is, taking what I've learned, pouring it into other people, and then letting those ripples go out, regardless if anybody ever knows who I am, that I ever existed. That will be a good use of the rest of my life. And so pretty much that's what I do now. I'm trying to figure out how to help more companies stay in business for more years, making more money. So, because I know, contrary to the media, I know that most business owners are not, these horrible slave driving taskmasters. Most entrepreneurial business owners, most privately held companies, which is 83% of all jobs in the United States, and 86.3% of GDP are companies of less than 50 people. Those people they raise the people's pay. They give them more benefits. They give to the local community. They spend in the local community. The best thing I can do is help them any way I possibly can, because they will go out and they'll dramatically magnify anything I could ever do on my own. So that's what I'm working on.
Well, that's a pretty noble cause, and it's pretty qualified for a guy who just didn't finish college and just intuitively knew what to do. Not all the time, as you admitted to, but
not all the time,
but a lot of the times. And being able to see the end is certainly your superpower there, Aaron. And thank you so much for the interview. Holly, final words.
Thank you, Aaron. You've really illustrated for us how you took what was in you, your heart and your passion and your purpose, and you poured that into your family, you poured that into your business, you poured that into your life, and you've really shown how success is holistic. It doesn't reside outside of us. It doesn't reside in a business. It doesn't reside in a relationship. It resides in all of those things. And that starts inside of ourselves and inside of our heart and pours into everything else. It doesn't work in reverse. It goes from the inside out. So thank you.
You got it.
Well, thanks for joining us there, Aaron Scott Young. Thank you again.
Thank you, Aaron.